Hello and welcome back to Deconstructed. I'm your host Sam Animo Mackenzie, and with me, as always, Parry Piro Pitchards. How you doing,
Z-
Parry?
the parry. I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Had a good weekend. Girlfriend was around. She falls asleep, and then there's still two best of threes to watch every single night. It's amazing. It's great.
Yeah, it's just a shame it was a shit dead Team Central.
Yeah, post major. But you know what? Last year Dallas, people said the same thing. It was actually really fun. I love the Cloud9 journey, and I love the Ents journey. I'm fine with teams fucking up sometimes if the underdog run feels a bit more earned.
It's
How
a
much
it's a
fun is
very
that?
it's a very Mickey Mouse tournament, but no, I'm happy for Ents. You know,
Hmm.
like Snappy a lot. Um, Nerd's pretty cool. Sampaio's pretty cool. Madden's pretty cool. Deha. But we're not here to talk about Ents, and we're not here to talk about that incredible series that they had, or at least incredible map that they had against FaZe. That's probably the game of the year for me so far.
Easily.
Um, but we're not here to talk about them. We will talk about FaZe a little bit. Um, we're also not here to talk about Cloud9. You know, we've
No.
said for weeks we'll speak about them. Not doing it. Not
Yeah,
doing
do
it.
you know what it is? Do you know what it is? We're delaying that because, in the same way that they're delaying actually making a roster change that would change the thing that's wrong with their team.
Yeah. So I'm not going to talk about them until they give me a reason to just say anything other than they're shit. Oh, sorry, I'm not meant to call people shit. Oh no. Anyway,
2 minutes. 2 minutes.
well, let's talk about
Uh,
the team that we're going to talk about. Let's talk about G2. So,
mhm.
G2, they come into 2023. Um, they've just won World Finals. It's actually, sorry, World Final. It's quite impressive, really, considering the roster looked completely dead in the water 2 months after creation, after bowing out in the Rio RMR, quite embarrassingly, in fact.
Mhm.
You know, they come into 2023, they continue their form. They're on a unbeaten map streak, finished at 22 maps. They win Kato, they drop a map in the final. But they looked fucking great. And I think a lot of people at that point in time were expecting that we come out the other side of Paris and all anyone's talking about is G2. They'd won the major. Nico's got his major. He's not
Mhm.
the best player to never win a major, which I'm sure we'll get to. Um,
Yeah.
it's just not happened, and I I'm not sure I completely understand why. I mean, I definitely have a solid a
Inkling.
solid take on why, but yeah, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's difficult. Well, they were my team. I thought they'd win the major. I think I even said as much on the heroic episode. I think I was like, I think if I had to put money on a team, like I don't think it's likely, but I think with I thought they would do what FaZe did last year, and they had a little bit of drop off, and then turn up at the major and have actually had time to practice properly, come up with a few new things, and then just smash it. Like all four of them were going to be back, all four of the fraggers were going to be back in proper good form, and then they could just win the tournament. But yeah, it just didn't happen. It looked like a struggle the whole time, like the whole tournament. It was a huge struggle, and they've come into Dallas, and it's like okay, we're into playoffs, That's fine. You're playing fine. You're playing fine. You're into playoffs. Nico's had a good group stage as always, and then they just happens again. It happens again. Like just completely outclassed by FaZe, and that's the rivalry, right? That's the two teams. They're always going to be comparing themselves against each other, and GT just didn't come close in that series. It's just and you're looking at it now, and it was like maybe Rich Lewis was right. Like it was just such a short period. Like yes, there was a play break in the middle, but they won those two big lands, and then just nothing else, just nothing.
Also, I think actually FaZe is an interesting point for us to start, and yes, they'll obviously be comparing themselves, but I think we should compare the two rosters, and I think we should take ourselves back a year.
Mm-hmm.
FaZe, very similar team in terms of fragging power, maybe an IGL who can't um, frag as much. Although I think people would give Carrigan a lot more credit for
Yeah,
fragging better than Hooksy, which isn't isn't false, but it isn't true either. It's a lot closer than people think. But so you look at FaZe, and FaZe's FaZe's period of success was a bit more drawn out. There's more tournament wins. But I think when FaZe slipped, we're talking after Cologne, Pro League, Rio, they were embarrassing.
Mm.
Other events that happened that didn't matter because it was in the second half of the year, and the second half of the year is just unfortunately quite shit. Um, they
Mm.
slipped up, and I think at the time, everyone's latched onto since like, yeah, they're just really inconsistent. They still got to a final. I can't say that. I work for the company. Like it's not so much that they're inconsistent. It's that their playstyle is inconsistent, right? The mere idea of teams like FaZe and G2 is inconsistent, right?
Yeah, I see what you mean. I see what you mean. It's like it's the idea that they're never going to have as deep a play because a team like Heroic, like they just can't. They just can't. They all have different ideas of how to play the game from like the IGLs they've used to be under, like the cultures they've come from. Like it's too big an ask to be able to play like that. So you do end up relying on, and it's not just that they don't have that. It's also that like an international team is never going to have players like Shush in it. It's quite hard to find an international Shush. This team is built of people who were the best players from their region. Like once Nico left Bosnia, once he left that region, like he was always going to be the best player from that region. Hunter, once Nico left into the international scene, like he was always going to be the best. JKS as well. I mean, obviously, Madison not quite the same thing, but like with the potential to be that. Like this is a team built of stars, and that all have to sort of make a few compromises. And I think honestly, even Nico's made a few compromises. Like he's so aggressive now. Like in the early round, and it's not just eco fragging. It's not just that. Like he is actually just a proper opener now. And I think that does. We'll get onto him later, but I think it's the idea that you're not in an international team. At least you're relying on firepower a lot more than a team like Heroic can. Is that's the base idea of why you're inconsistent, because individual firepower is never something that is going to 100% be there every single tournament, every single like game. Like it just can't be. It's like they're going to have really high ceilings, which is what we saw with the map streaks. But it's the floor that I just think the floor is just not going to be there for a while in these international teams, apart from like extreme examples. And I think yeah, they're too reliant on firepower.
So I think what I want to ask before we move back onto G2, then, just as a more general thing, I think before this kind of international era, you did have Navi 2021. Liquid kind of feel stupid to say because their period of dominance was literally 2 months, but they were always
Mm.
the second best team outside of that 2 months, and then obviously Astralis, obviously the consistency of Heroic and what we know their floor to be, what we've seen their ceiling can be. Is it inevitable then that in this firepower era of international teams that these drop offs, a maybe not in FaZe's case, come sooner than they do with other teams, and B they just the drop offs seem to be a lot harder?
Well, I think like FaZe is still like quite a similar team to what they used to be. Like I think FaZe is tricky to talk about because they won all those tournaments, but they were also close, right? Like all of their maps were so close. They'd run you into a close game and then just win in the chaos. Like they just thrive in the chaos. But now they kind of lost that. Like they lost in overtime to Heroic in Copenhagen and Blast for final, not finals. And then the Ents game, even like literally the other day, like these are the games in arenas that FaZe that you bet your house on FaZe to win, and they're just not doing that anymore. So like they've lost their kind of aura, and I think it's the same with G2. Like everyone's like, oh, G2 have solved Counter Strike. They've just got so much firepower. Like, how do you beat this? And then you just beat them once or twice, and it's like maybe they're not, the tactical depth isn't quite there, and it's like, hang on, we can beat these guys. Like, and then everyone does just start beating them. Like it happens a lot with the best teams in the world, and I think I think Navi's the same. Like as much as there's lots of other factors, like it was like one quick burst of a season. Liquid, one quick burst of a season, like actually at the top. like it's genuinely just Astralis. I think like, it's only Astralis out of the names you mentioned that were able to survive player breaks and still be the best team in the world. And like they had drop offs, and I think honestly they might have even benefited from not turning up to any lands for like 6 months because it's just no one could know what that level was at. Then no one knew about their new stuff and things like that. So, but they are the only ones. They are the only ones. Like it is really hard. Like teams adapt so quickly. There's always going to be a new player coming up that's just you can't prepare for, and he's just going to bang you out in a best of 3, and then you're like one elimination match away from just being out of tournament. Like, and that's like, G2 just they didn't even like the matches they lost at the major were quite close, but then once they've lost them, like you just like you look at the 1-3 record and you're like how can you go 1-3 at legend stage, and then you look at the games and it's like, oh, they're close, they're back and forth, like, and the individuals
Yeah,
just
but they're
didn't step
games they
up.
should be beating. Like they
Yeah,
should be beating. They're
yeah,
teams
that's
they
what I
should be
mean.
beating.
Teams they should be beating in close games. They should have more experienced players, more clutch players, and they should be beating them, and they're just not.
Well,
Like,
the thing that's a bit outrageous about it is it shouldn't even really be close games. Like, look,
no,
we're talking about like they lost to fucking Fnatic, right? We're talking about a Fnatic team
yeah,
that's
that's the embarrassing one.
reportedly making 3 changes. I don't even think that's the embarrassing one. I mean, I like Bad News Eagles a lot, but I'm pretty sure they also lost to Bad News Eagles, and fuck me, like these top teams need to stop fucking losing to Bad News Eagles. It should be the one team
Yeah,
they can fucking handle.
but you could at least like I could see why a fucking I could see why G2 would lose a best of 1 to Bad News Eagles. Anyone can lose a best of 1 to Bad News Eagles. Like they just like we were there and we were there for that major. We were there in the room with them. Like I was watching over Nico's shoulder. Like you can, but and his Bad News Eagles were insanely hype. Like you could see why under that sort of pressure, like you would crumble in the best of 1. Like it's
Fucking love
so
that.
they're so hard to play against in that environment. They're so hard to play against. And I'm fully skeptical of them, but in that room, it just you could feel it. Like you could feel how hard G2 were having to try every single round to like the comms were just off. Like it's just they just weren't there for it. They just weren't there for that game. And yes, you're right. That is the problem in of itself. Is that it's not just the losing; it's the letting it get close because we have seen teams just sweep Bandits Eagles. That's how you kill them. You kill them by front running. You kill them by not letting them get hype. Once it's a close game and they're screaming like every round, like that's rough. That's really rough. And G2 let them do that, and they're just. And that's the sense you get with G2. Like Nico's body language is something people talk about a lot. Like when you're watching G2, like he's always like one bad death away from just like giving the TO like finally something interesting to show between rounds because normally no one else does. Like, but Nico, you could get a good one out of Nico.
He stabs Hooksy on stage.
Yeah, and it's like he's just sort of like he's always doing this, like the fucking simple thing on the webcam. This is very bad for audio only, but when they just like look across, they look across the table and like, what the fuck are you doing? Like Nico and Simple love that. They love doing that, and it just can't. It doesn't feel like a great team atmosphere as much as it
Neither of
looks.
them never make mistakes.
Yes, yeah. Well, this is the thing. It never seems like, and I think it feels hard to say that from outside because we play pugs with our friends. We get stressed in pugs. We probably don't look like we're great friends, and then outside the server we are. Like that happens. Like it happens. Like in game is stressful,
Well,
but
we're horrible to each other, but
we're vile to each other. Like it's just. But this is a professional team. Like, could you just like relax a bit? Do you have to like just tilt that hard every time you die? Like that is something that I think like they've got the sports psychologist in. Also, well, he's not a biased sports psychologist.
he's a
He's
mind
like
body baldy.
he doesn't like it if you call him a psychologist, but yeah, he did the baldy thing. But yeah, they've got a guy, and it seemed like it was working. It seemed like they'd really got over it. But just nothing lasts. Nothing lasts in modern CS.
Well, so I'd kind of like to talk about him a bit. As a bit of there's a bit of an elephant in the room at the moment for people who actually read interviews, which is fucking nobody, because all you cunts just read the
Headlines,
headlines and
baby.
keep scrolling to leave a shitty comment. But so your colleague, no, did a fantastic interview with Hunter.
Oh,
Genuinely, it's a fucking phenomenal interview. Um, he just keeps pushing the poor bloke. Brilliant. So there's a few takeaways that I want to take from this interview. The mental seems completely broken in the fucking team. It seems completely broken. So, like, what is mind body baldy doing? Like, sports psychology isn't real. But
He's not a psychologist. That's the whole thing.
well, maybe if he fucking admitted what he is, maybe he'd fucking do his job.
Oh,
Um,
Christ.
it seems like there is a lot of covering for Hooksy going on. There's some throwing him under the bus as well. Seems like there's a lot of covering going though, and it also seems kind of contradictory and kind of like Hunter's realizing he's saying too much in terms of who's doing a lot of the calling at the moment. I'm not saying we've got a Yekindar Nitro situation on our hands, but I'm thinking that the faith might be slipping, and you know that Hunter talks about Hooksy's mental being the weakest and how uh he can't let go of what's happened at the major. And you know I've spoke to Hooksy about Rio in the past, and he hadn't let that go in Kato, so it's definitely things weigh on his mind for a
Mm.
while. Once again, what is Mind Body Baldy doing? Um, but
He's also a
the
fucking
thing,
superhero, Sam.
well, he fucking thinks he is. He's certainly fucking not, as we can see. But
Uh,
the thing I like, I really want to focus on as well. And I'll ask for your thoughts on all of it. But the thing I really want to focus on as well is what he starts saying uh about spring final. You know, uh he says it's the last event of the year before the break. It's kind of never easy mentally to just focus. You know you're playing the last event, and after that it's vacation. It's kind of hard. Like, sorry, are you
uh,
just already giving excuses for the fucking disappointment that we're about to see in whatever that arena is in Washington? Like, if it's an
yeah,
arena, it
it's
might just be a room. Who knows? Um, like
employee,
it
by the way.
seems like well, it seems like it seems like excuses, right? Like the whole thing. Like,
Yes.
what's your thoughts on the interview, man? Because like honestly,
Uh,
it's a hard read. Great interview, hard read.
yeah, it's a tough read because you can see, he's definitely trying to do the media line, like what they've been told to say. Probably you can see he's trying to do the, like, oh, Hooksy's still IGL, like we're just helping out, we're just helpful little teammates, and it's like, I don't know. And I think the spring final thing, I think that's honestly just normal player. Like, you just need Banks to go and bash his head with a microphone. I think that's normal, like just tempering expectations. Like, he's just been eliminated. Like, he's not going to be like, oh yeah, we're just going to turn up and we're going to win the event. Like, I think that's less egregious than the stuff about Hooksy, where he's like, basically says that him and Nico are just support callers. Like, fine, okay, fine. We know that. We know that you're support callers. But the bit, oh, where was it? The bit where he said about the struggling thing. I'll find it. So yeah, it's like, if you see that the IGL is struggling a bit and you're his teammate, you must help him. And that's what I'm trying to do, and that's what I've always done. It's like, yeah, I know what he's trying to say. I think that's probably even the media trained line, but I think it tells a full story of, like, the implication being that he is struggling a bit more than usual, because the question that Note asked him was, Note said, I'm standing in front of you. It sounds like you're talking a lot in timeouts, in mid rounds. Like, it sounds like you're calling, basically. Um, and that was what Hunter replied. He was like, no, Hooksy's still the main IGL. I just help. And I think there's like, every team needs a good support caller, like Stan on Heroic, Stewie on Prime Liquid. Shout out to my boy. But sometimes, like, you can sort of see the support caller kind of overreaching a little bit. And I think in bad times, it's really hard to not do that, because when you're someone like Hunter, you back yourself as a really good mid rounder. Like, he clearly is a very good mid rounder. He's like on sites a
If
lot
not
of
the
the
best in
time
the
without
world.
Hooksy. Yeah, like, he's rarely on sites with Hooksy, which means he's the site caller on CT side. Like, he will have to talk a lot. He will have to talk a lot. But it's a very different thing to IGL. And when you're struggling, you feel like, when you're the support caller, you feel like, you can offer more. You feel like you can offer more. You naturally start having more ideas if you're struggling on T side. And you're not taking over IGL. You're just talking more every round. Like, in the mid round, before you'd be like, oh, I'll see what Hooksy says, but now you'll be like, your mind is working on a different level. And I think we've seen it on Hunter's internet, like, individual form dropping off. I don't think it's a coincidence at all. I think he's doing much more, looking at the radar, much more thinking about macro while he's going on his default. I think there's no chance that's a coincidence. And I agree. I don't think he's lying. I think he's not the main caller yet, as far as I know. Like, he's not the main caller yet, but he's definitely, like, he's mid rounding a lot more than he did before, I think, from what this interview seems to suggest.
Well, the scary thing with that, like, really, is like, it isn't the idea of Nico fucking chewing another fucking IGL up and spitting the fucker out. Poor Hooksy. It's, it's fucking the idea of yet. It's it's the idea that
Mm.
even if that has already been done, now you've just got someone who's barely a warm body on a server, like seems like a very warm and lovely bloke, but fuck me, he can't play Counter Strike half the time. Like,
Mm.
like I, it's a a very scary prospect that they do just have a player who offers virtually nothing individually that won't be doing like his role that offers a lot to the team. And it's even more scary the fact that Hunter, one of the legitimately best players in the world, the one who actually might be the better fucking Bosnian player, might sandbag himself to become the fucking IGL. Like, what
Well, it
the
was what
fuck,
Kassad
man?
wanted ages ago, wasn't it? It was like Kassad, like when Kassad was doing his anti-Hooksy shit, he was like, no, you don't need an IGL from somewhere else. You just make Hunter the IGL. Like
Terrifying.
it's not something completely crazy. But yeah, you are right. It's he's too good a player. I don't like it when support callers become IGLs. Like I know that's kind of the natural transition, but it's a very, very different skill
I mean,
set. Like
it's a natural
completely different.
transition. It's a natural transition when you're fucking bad at the game. Like,
Yes,
I know he is already like
exactly.
28 or whatever, but it's a natural transition typically when you are 28. For his case, probably 30, 32 or something. Like, it's
Late
when
bloomer.
you've become bad. It's when you can no longer make those crazy mid-round plays, hit all those crazy fucking headshots. It's when you're like, all right, like I can't do this stuff. Let me go and fuck off and become the Bianca. I'll start going out first more. I'll do more of
Mm-hmm.
this supporting shit, and I'll try this thing. Like, I mean, like, it's like fucking your Kindar, man. Why are these fuckers doing it now? Because that will be the outcome with Hunter right now. Like, if they don't get Shuey, if they don't, you know,
Snappy.
I mean, I don't even want to see that. I think it would be great for Snappy for 3 months until they have one bad event and fucking Nico, even if they say it doesn't happen, Nico loses faith in the fucker.
We're doing
Like,
the lazy thing. We're doing the lazy thing. I don't think it's Nico. I don't think it's Nico. I think
no, it's going to be a
from
team.
outside, do you know what it seems like? Do you know what it seems like? It seems like Hooksy. Seems like Hooksy believes all the narrative about G2 and about how much pressure he's under. It seems like Hooksy. They had like a bad one at like they were actually like the best team in the world like 2 months ago. They had one bad event like Pro League. They just got knocked out by Ents like the day CS2 got released. Like no one was even watching the game. Like everyone was just talking about CS2. Barely even counts. And then they suck at the major. And now Hooksy's like the most emo fucker in the world. Like he's like genuinely tweeting as if like they're the worst team in the world. But they're still really good. They're still really good. Hooksy can still give a lot to this team. I think he's believing the own like from outside. It seems hard to tell, but yeah, they are covering for him. Like they could easily throw him under the bus here and be like, yeah, like he's being really emo, blah blah blah. Like they are still covering him. I still think they know that he can give a lot to this team. Like Nico's praised him a lot in interviews. Like it's happened a lot. Like he's clearly someone who's this bad individually wouldn't be on G2 unless he's very good at calling. Like he survived a long time. They could have cut him off the RMR. They clearly saw a lot of potential, and that potential was realized at World Final and stuff like that. Like I think Hooksy's main issue right now is that he believes he's on the chopping room floor. And
No,
whether that's true or not, it's clearly unhealthy that he's like putting this much pressure on himself every single event. Like, oh, we need to win this event or I'm going to get cut. That's what it feels like. That's what it felt like at Dallas. It felt like this is, fucked up the majors. We've got to do better now. And he just didn't look himself, and that's sad because he's just such a good character for the scene. Like, I don't want Hooksy to go, to be honest.
no, I agree, and maybe maybe it is a lazy narrative that's certainly like I think it's more applicable to the past. Like Nico's
Mm-hmm.
definitely going to
Yeah.
have a hand in certain things. Like I'm without a doubt he had a hand in fucking Alexi B. There's no fucking way he didn't. But I think not with. I think maybe not with Hooksy because I think maybe Nico himself has learned. But you can tell Hooksy puts a lot of pressure on himself because that entire narrative is, you know, you're on a team with one of the best players to ever touch the game. His cousin, who is better than him, but no one believes that, except about 3 of us who are enlightened. With
Oh,
the
the
Orpa,
rest.
who is potentially going to become the best player to ever touch the game. With I can't really hype him up by saying the best Australian, because that's really not hard. But JKS is a fucking good player. He is a good player. Like,
Mhm.
you're on this team with incredible fragging power, and you play like you have one hand, and you're constantly shifting it between your mouse and your keyboard. Like it's very understandable he puts the pressure on himself, but there's once again, what is Mind Body Baldy doing? Because there's gotta be something. There has to be something to stop Hooksy from doing this, because he can never perform in while he's doing that. He can never ever perform. But is it fair to blame Hooksy? Like, has he really
Honestly,
done a good job?
I think he's done a very good job. And then it's the thing where when they were winning, like he was getting credit, but not like the way Carrigan was getting credit when FaZe were winning. Like he was calling well, but it wasn't like anything ultra crazy. Like it was they were doing the basics really well. Like he built a system that suited these players much better than Lexi B did. And that seemed to be getting the best out of them individually. So then, what credit he was getting credited for getting the best individual form out of JKS, Hunter, Nico, Manasi at the same time. Like that's what he was getting credit for. So when their individual form drops off, when Hunter's dropped off like a cliff, when JKS drops off a cliff, like yeah, you couldn't expect them to be like those two have like they were like when in my big games players article, like they were the top, they were like the top two for a lot of those stats. Like it was those two were in Abu Dhabi and Katowice, though they were the two best players in the arena back to back. Like they were carrying, and they're like supposed to be the third and fourth best player on this team. Like that was supposed to drop off. That's fine. Like JK's and Hunter dropping off is fine. But at some point, the question marks do it just the buck always falls to the IGL. Like you can say like, oh, they're just not DMing as much, blah, blah, blah. Like that's kind of I don't know. Like I don't know if that's true. I think it's honestly it's really hard to analyze from outside why the individuals have dropped off. But Hooksy has to take some of the blame, like at least some of the blame.
Well, so for me, this is the really difficult one, right? Because when you look at G2, I mean, what like World Final? What was that? It was the first event since like fucking. I know it's a very different team, but it was the first event for G2 since like, was it DreamHack Malmo or something
Yeah,
ridiculous like that fucking years
yeah,
ago?
it was Mama, I think.
Yeah. So I know that's a very different team. I'm pretty sure that was like French super team. Um, might not have
Yeah,
been the
yeah.
actual
French
super
super
team.
team won an event.
Was it
Yeah,
the full super team? Okay,
yeah. I think they won one in Dallas and one in Malmo.
right. Um, but so like you've had multiple iterations of and multiple IGLs with Nico and Hunter. I'm not saying Nex is a great IGL. I certainly don't think he is. Um, if you've watched last week, I'm not sure what I think on Alexi B. I'm really not. Uh, but I think that even with Jax, even with fucking who else was on the team, like dog shit
Amanek.
washed Amanek. I quite like Amanek actually. Um, even with maybe not as an AWPer, but pretty washed up Kenny, like you still had some fucking good players. You still should have been able to do more than you fucking did. Like
Mhm.
there's got to be a lot of credit given to Hooksy for making G2 into a winning team. It was cursed, and he pushed past that. But I think like you said, he's got to take some blame for it, because was it a case of his calling and the system he built, or was it just that everyone was playing to a level, as we've seen with FaZe, with Brokey and the amount of clutches Brokey was winning, twists in consistent levels, um, Rops to a certain extent. That's something we don't need to get into. Like, is it more just that they were in such a purple patch at such a high peak that they were at a level where it wouldn't have mattered too much who was calling. Like, and it's actually not as much down to
Mhm.
him. I can't tell anymore. I really can't.
Yeah, and it is really hard to tell something like that. Like Munacy, he always gets credit for Munacy, right? Hooksy's like he did the interview. I can't. It might have been a podcast where he was like, "Oh, like Munacy was doing loads of support orping under Alexi B. Like he was just like on T side, he just barely had like any gunfights. Like he was always just throwing utility." And Hooksy was like, "Oh, I stopped him doing that. Like I was just like, what are you doing? Like go kill people, basically." And he's got credit for that because then Munacy seemed to have this explosion in form. Like he was like, "Okay, he's the winning guy now." Like blah blah blah. But honestly, I think that I don't like that narrative at all because I think it just Munacy just needed 6 months of LAN experience. Like he just needed 6 months. And now he's got the 6 months, and then now he's more confident to call picks and things on T side and T side. Like I think that was all that was. I think under Alexi B, Munacy would still have had it. Like I said this last week. Like I think Hooksy gets too much credit for Munacy, but maybe not enough credit for G2 as a team. And then because then you look at it now, and it's like it's really hard to get out of a rut once your IGL stops believing in themselves. Like Carrigan did it on G2. Like Carrigan did it on FaZe. I'm sorry. Like Carrigan was on FaZe, but not IGLing for a bit, wasn't he? For like a little bit.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
Nico was IGLing while
yeah.
Carrigan was just a
Yeah,
player. Like
I
like
I
like
wrote about it. It's
it's
like 2 months. It was only a few events.
yeah. It was, but it's one thing when your team loses faith in your IGL, and it's another when your IGL loses faith in himself. Like that is like I think if he's blaming himself, does that not kind of say something a little bit?
Yeah, I like I agree, and I'm glad you brought up Munacy because if not, I was going to like yeah okay, Hooksy might have utilized him differently, but like he even said in an interview I did with him it was like the most important thing for Munacy was that Munacy was starting to starting to say like oh this round I want to go here I want to go for this pick I want to do this like you know saying the stuff he wants to do that's not something fucking Hooksy can do like you know genuine any of you right who's out there you play in your little 5-man pug team maybe you got a guy who warps start start asking them to call things they want to do at the start of the round. Watch how long it takes them to do it. They won't do it. They won't do it because it takes a while. Like, yeah, okay, a couple of rounds they might be moving to different places anyway, but it's a fucking difficult thing to do, especially at pro level when you don't want to fuck up even more because there's hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line. Like, it's a very difficult thing to say, okay, this round I'm not going to go to my default spot. I'm going to go into Palace and I'm going to take this early pick. And if I lose this early pick, we're in a 5v4 and our economy could get, or a 4v5, and our economy could get completely fucked because CT economy is fucked. It's an extremely hard thing to do. Not only to have the understanding to know what to call and when to call it, because you've got to have a knowledge of what teams are potentially likely to do in certain rounds, like with their money and stuff, but also just have the confidence to do it. And I think with 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 Munacy, that was probably just an inevitability. Like I don't know the first time you saw a Munacy clip, right? The first time I saw a Munacy clip, the kid was like 13, 14.
Yeah.
And you could tell then, like, this wasn't Doc. Like, this kid was different fucking gravy. He was always
Mhm.
going to be fucking good. And like you said, he just needed the experience. I agree. I think Hooksy gets a lot of credit for that. So, I'll go back to my original question. Is he a scapegoat because he's the IGL and because he can't frag? Or
Mhm.
is is this on him?
He's easy to pick on. He's easy to pick on because you look at those four players and you go, like I could go there. Like I could go and sit there and you know go A, go B, and we'd probably win 16 rounds against most teams in the world. Like that's kind of the mentality when you're looking at this. And I think the one player we probably should talk about more is Nico. He's like the face of this team, and we've like barely mentioned him. Like you can't talk about GT without talking about Nico because it is Nico's team. It's defined by Nico completely. Like it's Nico's team. Even though Munacy's probably like been a better player while they were good, like it's still Nico's team, and he's he's got such an important role as the opener guy, like as the guy who's mostly taken map control. Like he's taking the risky peaks, honestly. And I don't know. I feel like he's still got a lot of respect, but he's not hit the heights that he hit in Stockholm under Hooksy. I don't think he has. I like even when they were winning tournaments, he was rarely like player of the match all that often. Honestly, like he didn't get the MVPs. Like Manessy got a world final, and then Hunter got Katowice. Like he's been quite in playoffs quite a lot. Like it's actually just a proper trend now. Like he'll get like 1.25 in every group stage, and then 1.1, 1.15 in playoffs. Like even when they were winning tournaments, like yeah, which is still good. But bear in mind that sample size is over like a period where like, fucking Hunter and JKS were getting like 1.2 plus. Like they're winning these games. Like if you're getting a low rating and winning, like that shouldn't be happening. Like if G2 were winning games, Nico should be at the top, and he wasn't. He wasn't in those playoff games, and you just have to sort of question him a little bit because he's the superstar. He's the best player to never win a major. Like that'll be what he goes down as probably, and I think that's fair enough. I don't know if you disagree with that, honestly. No, best
No,
player to never
not
win a
at all.
major. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah. I
agree.
mean,
I think so.
who's the other contenders? Like Elysian Guardian? It's absolutely
Yeah,
Nico.
I
It's
think it's Nico.
absolutely.
It's got to be Nico. It's best rifle of all time for me, which is a different thing to greatest before Dupree fans come in the comments. Fucking Elliot. Jesus.
Dupree is the
Um,
greatest rifler in CSGO.
I
Sorry.
hate it. I hate it. But and yeah, and he did this a few years ago. He did this. He took it upon himself. And to become this way more aggressive player. Like he's now the opener. He's now taken all these picks. Like he used to be an aggressive lurker, and now he's just basically an entry fragger. Like he doesn't actually do that much entering because Hooksy, obviously, if Hooksy's alive, he will jump around a corner. Like that's just sort of how any team
With
with
any
this
gun in
sort
his
of
hands.
yeah, like this is how any team with 4 amazing players and 1 kind of bad player should work. Like he should be entering if he's alive. But if he's not, like there's times on like even there's like a lot of spots on a lot of maps where Nico is the one entering because he just likes the pathing, like he just thinks it's fun or something. Like on B and Inferno, like even if Hooksy's alive, Nico will probably be the first one in just because he just loves the fights. And for someone with his ability, you do kind of wonder because it's obviously much easier to be a superstar from passive spots. Like we were talking about Rops earlier, like Rops's impact fluctuates quite a lot because sometimes like he always gets like a consistent number of kills, but it doesn't feel like he's taking over games maybe as much as like if Nico's got 30 kills, like you fucking know about it. Like he's just all over the map. He's just winning rounds on his own. Whereas like if Rops has 30 kills, it's like they're probably like half of them are probably in like 4v4s. He gets like 1 kill, like just on a rotating guy, and it's like fine. But I think there is some merit to the argument that Nico's choice to become this really aggressive player, like it's really admirable in a lot of ways, but also like would he have not won more tournaments maybe, but been more consistent as a superstar for longer? Because you saw that peak in Stockholm, like it was a stupid peak. Like if Simple didn't exist, he just wins the MVP on his own. Like you remember the Deagle whiff, but you should actually remember how good he was against Heroic. Like he just completely destroyed Heroic on his own. Like he was playing well against Navi as well, and then
Yeah, well, maybe he
he
shouldn't.
can't hit it again. He can't
Maybe
hit
he
it
shouldn't
again.
have a deagle whiff. Like maybe if he was
Ah,
that good, maybe if he was that good, we wouldn't have things like that to remember him by. And where's your rings, Chuck? Where's your
where's
rings?
your rings, Chuck?
Because at the end
Oh,
of the day, I get all of this you're saying. I get all of this you're saying. I really do, and I agree. It's fucking admirable. Admirable. It's admirable. There we go. I got my
nice.
word out in the end. That he decided to become this more aggressive player. That he took it upon himself to do this, and maybe he looked at the other members of his team. Maybe he looked at Hunter. Maybe he looked at JKS, and he was like, "These people can maybe not do it as well as I can, but I can do something that they can't do."
Hmm.
I really like that, and I do like the suggestion that for him some of it's just I just think it's fun. Like I,
Definitely is. You
I
definitely
like
get
that.
that vibe, right?
I like that a bit more than him taking responsibility on himself. He's just like, nah, it's just funny. Like I really like running up
Oh,
banana actually.
yeah, he
Um,
does. He takes so much nade damage every single game, and it's
like,
like, fuck, can you not just let Hooksy do it just once?
I
Just
mean,
like,
like Frozen's also definitely on that one. He fucking loves running up banana
lives for
last
it,
game.
mate.
But I just, I, 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 I want to say that Nico is the greatest rifler in CS:GO. I know this isn't really what we were saying, but I'll loop it back. I'll loop it back. I want to say that Nico is the greatest rifler in CS:GO history. Um, because I think in terms of raw ability, he probably fucking is. Like, I don't think that's something you can put into debate. But I think there's a lot more that goes into it, and I think that with Nico, potentially, whatever it is, when you look at all the finals he's been in, because I'm sorry, being in that many finals and only having one premier tournament win, whatever, like, Cato, Cologne, majors, like those four technically from a year, I I think he's got to have a mentality problem. I think when you look at, like Cold Sarah, he has two. Uh, I'm not going to make the argument for Get Right because I'm pretty sure he has a headshot ratio percentage lower than Orpa's. Olaf has two or three majors.
Three.
Dupree
Oh
Dupree
no,
has,
two, only two.
yeah, it is two, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Dupree has five majors.
Stop doing the Dupree thing. Honestly,
Did I say Cold? Like
you did
Cold
say
has
cards.
two. I did say Cold. Like I don't think Nico can, like just because you don't want me to say Dupree, even though it is Dupree. I don't even think Nico can be mentioned above Olaf or Cold. Uh, I think he comes
Mm,
fourth for me because,
yeah.
like, I mean, longevity has to be an aspect, and that's where potentially you argue for Nico above those two. That's why for me Dupree is so high. Um, I just think he's got a mentality problem, or not a mentality
Mm,
problem, but he's got a mentality feels like the wrong word, but it probably is the right word. He gets to these crunch moments and something just goes in him. Like, I don't know. Do you not think that's potentially true?
yeah, I think that there has to be an element of truth to it. Like, it's this community narrative that his friends in the media, as certain people say, but that people are always denying it on his behalf. Like, people are always saying, like, no, there's nothing. Like, it's not a mentality thing. Da, 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 da. But I think it's so hard to like. He's just so good, man. Like like even the way we're talking about him now is if he sucks. Like he's got like 1.15 plus ratings for like the last four events. Like he's like when I say consistency, I mean purely in those big games. It's purely in those big games where you look at him and he's just like the fucking Dallas one the other day where his mouse was like it looked like his mouse was shaking. I've never seen Nico like how he played against FaZe in that quarterfinal. I've never seen it.
Are we talking like Kiev? I couldn't watch that game. Are we talking like Kiebi shaking when he's aiming, or like when he's literally holding an angle, his mouse is shaking?
Like it just he just never looked comfortable. It wasn't like Kiebi shaking. It was it just looked like he couldn't like hold his fucking mouse straight. Like there's that clip
Right.
of him where he jumps onto CT over the smoke, free kill on drops, just whiffs, falls off the box into a molly. Like that's
Oh,
not
right.
Nico. That's not Nico, man. Like, who is that? Like I think he's been so good for so long, and I think missing out on that last major, it's going to be really hard for him to mentally overcome. And it's just, yeah, and it does feel late. It does feel lazy to talk about Nico as that I am the captain now. Like there's that guy. Like I think that's lazy, but I don't think it's lazy to say
No, that's
that
me, mate.
maybe yeah. Well, but I don't think it's lazy to talk about him as an underachiever compared to his talent. I think that is undoubtedly true, and he's been in enough different teams with enough different people that something he has to be doing something. He has to be contributing somehow to that because like Simple was in bad teams and was amazing, fine. And Zyra was in bad teams, but they both got their major. Like they both eventually got it clicking and got their MVPs. Like when Nico's team was clicking, like properly clicking, world final in Katowice, and he wasn't top ranking. Like that's like when you look at this team on paper, it is Nico. It's Nico. Like Monacy's still a child. Like Nico should be this team's best player, and he is their best player, but not in the big moments. And that is just really sad to me because that like Nico is so much fun to watch. Like just everyone, as much as everyone loves to hate him and all that, like he's just the most like crisp aimer. Like he's just when Nico's having a good game and you watch a POV demo of him, like it's just ridiculous. Like you watch him and just like this is Counter Strike. Like this is Counter Strike. but he just, I don't know. I don't want to go in circles. But he's just, there has to be something. There just has to be something. And if it's not
Well,
mentality, I don't know what else it could possibly be.
well, in that case, because I think we could realistically, we could talk about Nico all day,
Yeah,
and go
easily.
back and forth. So I think I'll end by saying that the saddest thing about Nico, with all his talents, is that as we go into CS2, he's going to have, I'm sure, a few years left in the tank or whatever. But in terms of CSGO, Nico's legacy is losing, and
Mm-hmm.
that is really sad. But I think there's obviously other members of this team we have to talk about. I don't think there's a point in talking about Munacy. Like, the bloke's like 12 years old. He's fucking phenomenal. I think,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there might not be linear growth in Counter Strike, but I do think he's only going to get better for another
He'll
year,
probably just stay the same, but he'll
maybe
stay the
two.
same for 10 years and just be
No,
insane.
I do think he'll get a bit better. I think, I think it's very clear with Munacy that he's still learning. Um,
It's got
so
like
I do,
14,000 hours, bro.
yeah, but it's very different to fucking tier one.
Yeah, I know what you're
Like,
getting at. I know what you're getting at.
so I do think with Munacy, like um, he will get better. I don't think there's much point talking about him. I know you don't, so we'll move on from Munacy. Like, the bloke's a GOAT candidate already potentially, not from what he's achieved so far, but like, when we go down the line, he's going to be in the conversation. I think, unless he fucking breaks his wrist like all the good players fucking seem to. But let's let's instead talk about the real drop off. We've already mentioned it. I think we're probably both going to agree that you can't really blame them for just being good at the start of the year. But how much of the blame does need to be put on JKS and Hunter?
Um, I think on the JKS one, I don't think you can really blame him because it was so clearly an overperformance. Like, it was just so obvious that he was never going to be like the star player from his roles. Like, he's not supposed to be. He was just supposed to be like a better anchor than Jax on CT side. Like that. That was why he's in the team. Like, basically, like, just a better anchor on T and CT. Just like the passive guy, just do your job. Just sit on top of balcony every round on Mirage, which he still does, by the way. Just insane. Just never seen someone play a same spot every round, but he does. And he still gets 2 kills every time. Like, that's his job. That's his job, and he does his job. Like, even now when he's only getting 1 point, like he's still getting decent ratings from these roles. Like, JK is fine. Hunter maybe more so, maybe a lot for the reasons we were talking about earlier, rather than literal individual drop off, because individually he is insane and he should be doing more, because as much as he is quite old, like he's not played that many like the tier 1 maps. Like, think about, like, Hunter became a thing really in like 2019. Like, he's only played like 4 years of top tier like competition probably. Like,
Never
he's
forget
got,
our never forget our opinion on him back then.
well, we just didn't watch him, did we? To be fair,
No,
but
we were
yeah,
no,
but he
but
won
we
us
weren't
over. He won us
very
over.
wrong. He did win us over. Good
He
bloke.
did win us over. And he's so clearly like such a smart guy as well. Like, every time you do interview him, you can tell he just knows his fucking stuff. Like, and I don't think this drop off is going to be permanent for Hunter. I don't think that's the recipe. The recipe is you fix Hooksy's emo shit. Nico just somehow, for however he does it, just carries on doing what he's doing. But in the big moments, can do it as well. I don't know if that means making him a little bit more passive, having a little bit higher floor. Because at the moment, if he's playing bad, he still takes the jewels and he still dies, and it's like come on, bro. Like, I know you've got to back yourself for jewels, but maybe be a little bit more passive and just let like the late round players in your team work a bit more. Like, just give them more of a chance, basically. But then Hunter, I think Hunter just needs to. I think Hunter would really benefit from just Hooksy just being more confident. If Hooksy was more confident, or there's always going to be rumors of a new IGL. If a new IGL does come in, I think Hunter just needs them to properly take the reins and let him only mid round when he's really fucking feeling it. He shouldn't be thinking about it all the time. That's what I think all Hunter needs to get back to his normal level. That's just either Hooksy gets Either Hooksy can take the reins back, which is going to be really hard, probably, or a new IGL comes in, whoever it is.
So in that case, we always have a little chat about roster moves on this.
You
It's
love
not
it.
meant to be for that, but we do love it. I love roster moves. It is one of my favorite things
Football
about.
Manager addict.
That's right. I am an addict. Um, if this team was to make an IGL change, who would you like to see come in? There's obviously,
Mm-hmm.
there's Shuey on the rise. There's the agent of Hampus saying that Hampus is ready to come back and play. I mean, apparently Buddy Nex is willing to play some Counter Strike again. Let's get that
Mm,
fucker back in. Let's not do that.
Christ.
Who would you like to see?
I don't know. I think those are all. I think Shuey. I think we talked about it on the Game Legend episode. I think he'd be fucking great at it. But I think if I was him, I'd want him to wait a few more years before he takes on like superstars like these. I think he's good enough that he should go to a Mouse, go to an OG, and just chill out for a bit. Honestly, like, and just still have that underdog aura around him while he builds up how he thinks about the game, because he's still so young. I don't think like everyone's going to want Shuey to G2 because it's the flashiest name, but I don't. I'd probably, if I was G2, I'd probably try and do it anyway because he's just the best name on paper. But if I was Shuey, I wouldn't want to, honestly. And that's crazy to say. Like, of any IGL would want these four players, but you could see how if it goes wrong, like it can just kill your career. Probably like it just kills everyone's perceptions of you, because it's like, if you can't win with them, like how are you going to win with us? Like that's what it becomes. I think Shuey should wait. Hampus, I don't know. I don't know
Weird
how I feel
roles,
about
right?
that.
Weird roles.
Yeah, well, Hampus can be the super. He's like in Niv, he was just like the aggro guy, basically, the aggro guy, but like lurking a lot. Like it's kind of fraudeny. There's a bit of art in there sometimes for Hampus. Like it's just more individually skilled than those two, but still a little bit. Like I don't love it. Don't love it, but I could be convinced of it. It's the thing when you talk about the names, like maybe Kixan. Kixan could be fun if you believe in the Kixan hype.
So,
Maybe that's fun.
so,
Bit of
so,
the Balkan energy coming in, but
I'm glad.
honestly, I don't think any of them are better than Hooksy that are on the market. Maybe Shuey, but I'd rather wait on him. I think I'd fucking spend a lot of money to send Hooksy to a lovely little vacation in the Seychelles this summer and just leave him for a month. Hope CS2 doesn't come out, and just leave him for a month. Just let him just fucking relax, just chill out. Mental health break, but like an actual one, not just a protracted, not just a protracted 6 month wait for a better team, like an actual mental health break. Like just chill out, just fucking chill out, and just come back and win everything, because he has got it in him to call. Like he's never going to be a GOAT IGL. Like I don't like, that's just, you could just see like the ceiling isn't there. Like he's never going to have the aura that like a Kerrigan or a Glaive does. Like he just isn't, unfortunately. But he could be a good enough caller for those four players to win tournaments. Like we've seen that. He just needs to get back to it. And honestly, I think he can. I think the summer's going to be good for him. Hopefully, Washington isn't an embarrassing defeat. Like it can be a defeat, but just please don't be an embarrassing one, because then we're in trouble. That he is just gone, I think, probably. Like I just want to see a good showing, get a bit of positivity around G2 would be great. Like it's not that bad, lads. Like yes, you fucked up at the major, but then so did everyone. Like no one's calling. Like I know there's rumors that Blade might be leaving Navi, but people have already forgotten that Navi bombed out of the major. No one even talks about Navi. G2 they're just that household brand. Like everyone's just so quick to just jump on G2. It's like, yes, the bombing the major is obviously terrible, but it happens. It actually just does
Yeah,
happen,
but
provably, to a lot of
but
teams.
but Harry, Navi did bomb out in a
Why
Monty
were they in that
lost.
2-2 game?
No, Monty
Why were they in
lost.
that 2-2 game?
No, losing to FaZe is a bit more reasonable. And they did at least win one more map.
But
Uh,
you know what I mean, though.
I agree with. No, I agree with everything you're saying. I really do. I do think though. I'm very glad you said Kixan. Because I was kind of expecting you to. To be fair, but I do think if Hooksy goes, he's the best shout. I mean, like when you consider where Apex were to where they are now with like him in the
Mm-hmm.
team, uh, there's there's no doubt in my mind that he's done fucking wonders.
Mhm.
Like he's definitely a good IGL, and if you don't believe the hype, fuck off. Um, but I am also inclined to agree. I'm not sure how much of an upgrade Kicksan would be, but I'm also not sure that necessarily
Mm.
anyone is an upgrade. I think everyone is a sideways move.
Oh yeah, everyone
Um,
feels like one.
it's like you said. He's not Carrigan. He's not Cadian. He's not Hooks. He's not an S tier IGL. He's not. He's a
Yeah.
good
That's
IGL,
fine. That's fine.
but yeah, but it's fine because he's on a team where like realistically they should be able to make up for it. And it's like you said, if Washington is embarrassing, he he could be he could be fucked. But
Yeah.
I think the most important thing, like you said, you give the bloke a good old mental health break. You send him off to like the fucking Maldives or whatever, like wherever the fuck you said to send him off to. I don't really care where he goes. Just get him some sand in a bloody ocean. He'll be happy.
Hmm.
Uh, but I think the most important thing, right, is it's tempering expectations because it's been what 9 months and they've won two tournaments. I think you can look at it with the talent they've got on their roster and be like, well, this is mildly unacceptable. But you can
Mm.
also look at it and think, since that roster's been formed, the only team who's won more tournaments than them is Vitality, right? Like because they won Pro League. That was
Yeah.
the
That's
first
us
event
here
for the
free.
two rosters, Rio and the major. Obviously, the major stands out, but I think it's also kind of fair that
I mean, G2's
Kato,
Kato run was harder
yeah, like
than Vitality's major.
Kato really stands out for G2 as well. I mean, like you can argue in the 9 months. Like I know we've made the argument for Heroic being the best team over the last fucking 2.5 years or whatever it is, but you can argue that G2 and Vitality still probably stand as the best team over 9 months. It's kind of difficult because
Mm.
G2 weren't at the Rio Major. Um, is it unacceptable? Is it?
I
Is
think
it
it's just
not?
modern CS. I think it's just modern CS. I think modern CS is gonna lead to lots of parity areas because of the way the partner system it works. Like it's just hard to stay at the top of your game. It's just really hard, and there's not enough high intensity games to keep momentum going. And there's like even now, like Dallas, like you called it a Mickey Mouse event. Like we're trying really hard to like analyze it. Like oh, like Nico looks really off, but it is a Mickey Mouse event. Like everyone's still depressed about the major. Like it's it's really difficult in modern CS to build an era, and I think that's why I think I'm more positive on FaZe than other teams because I think I just recognize that what they did is really really hard. Like it's not even Navi won fewer tournaments like on LAN than FaZe. Like it's
With their Mickey Mouse Grand
we're
Slam.
just it looks like we're just destined for another era of parity. And I know this is always what it feels like, and then the next great team pops up, but there hasn't been one yet. Like no great team has popped up yet. I think two big tournaments, and they are big tournaments that G2 won in 9 months, is actually considering they bombed out the major. So they like the one. How many big events were there in the last few months of last year? Like there's Pro League and then
Pro
Blast Full
League.
Final, the major, and then Blast World Final. Like that's all
Yeah.
I can remember. So there's four events, and they missed one, and then they won one. So like there's not a lot of events to be honest that people actually care about. There's not a lot, and every team is gunning to win those events, and maybe that's where GT fall down because the major is when it's completely even. Like everyone has the same level of motivation going into the major, which should be the tip top, and they failed in two major cycles over those 9 months, and that does sting. That of course that stings, but they've been pretty good. They've been pretty good, and it's about whether they can halt the downward spiral that they're currently on. That's what it's all about, and we'll see at Washington, I guess, a little hint to if they can to see if more changes are coming. Because honestly, it just feels like there probably is, doesn't it? It feels like what I said earlier about they just need to not get embarrassed when Hooksy might stay. I don't know. I don't know. The more I think about it, I don't know. I think it's. I hope they don't make changes, but ah, you just I could see it. You wouldn't be surprised, would you?
Well, I think the thing that sticks out to me, going back to Notes interview, is the part where it talks about Hooksy being on his own a lot. Like, if you're a team where you're actually trying to help, you stick by your teammate. You have your arm around him when he seems down. Like, I'm not telling them to fucking walk around fucking acting like everything's jolly, holding hands and skipping down the yellow brick road, big road. Um, but
Big road.
like it, yeah. I don't want him to go. I really like Hooksy, and I'm honestly not sure where he goes after G2 because I think a lot of teams will be aware of they can't take the hit that G2 took by having him. Maybe they can. I don't know. Liquid Hooksy could be fun. Um,
Yeah.
but
Better fragger than Nitro, I've heard.
well, that's not hard. Um, but like, yeah, I think it's it's a real shame because I think changes really could be coming. I don't think the way they're seemingly acting at Dallas uh seems right for a team that is actually trying to reinvigorate their teammate, and especially one that's as important as Hooksy, considering he's meant to be the IGL. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's fair necessarily to say how much of a downward spiral this is, right? Like maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
It looks like the start of
Because
one. We're not like in it, but it looks like the start of one.
well, no, but okay, yeah, but you can and you could have said this about FaZe, like, oh, they didn't win anything after
Never felt like they were going to cut
after
someone though, did
Blow.
it? Honestly,
Yeah, but like,
even now it doesn't feel like they're going to cut someone. Like they failed again, but
yeah, but I think
like there's
it's
so much faith in Carragher in that team, and that's something you
yeah,
can't buy.
but I think the difference with Hooksy is that there was never like there's faith in Carrigan because Carrigan truly earned his spot on FaZe. He lost his spot on FaZe. He went to fucking Envy. Like that wasn't disrespectful to him and everything he fucking is. But then he got his spot on Mouse. He turned Rops into what, like a top 5 player at that point. Like Rops was
Hmm.
very good for Carrigan on Mouse. He did all this. He earned his spot. With Hooksy, it never really like felt like he earned his spot. I don't. I think now you look at it and yeah, no, he has. He absolutely has. But he hadn't earned it when he joined. Realistically, he hadn't.
Yeah,
And
not a lot of people
like,
were predicting he would join G2 at the time, were they? Like,
but I think potentially it's very unfair to say that this is the start of a downward spiral, unless changes do come. In which case, it's just another dead team at Dallas.
yeah,
But I wanna like I kind of want to leave us on a quote that I got from Twist in Paris when I asked him whether he thinks the narrative of FaZe being inconsistent is unfair on them. And he said, if you look at CS right now, you could say every team is inconsistent because no one is winning consistently. We were the last true team to win consistently back to back. I think the community has a memory of 2 weeks, and that's basically it. What happened in the last 2 weeks is the most relevant to them. But honestly, if you look at it and the competitive landscape, you could say that everyone is inconsistent. And that's honestly kind of true. Like,
hmm,
even heroic to certain aspects. Like, even vitality to certain aspects. I know we're seeing like the height of vitality. They could go into fucking Cologne, they could go into spring final, and they could be dog shit. Like they could get eliminated in quarters at both. I just think it is the way CS is now, and I know you kind of agree. You basically said that, like you've said as much. I think the way CS is built now, the way the landscape is, the international teams, and the level of firepower people have gotten to, CS is pretty much doomed, and it could change in CS2, but CS right now is doomed at a point where I don't think unless we get Simple and Zywu on a team together, we're ever going to see a truly dominant team again.
Mm. Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. I think CS2, hopefully the meta will change enough where, 'cause I think that's the thing. CS2's been out. CS:GO's been out for long enough now that like it's harder to find like something new that just gives you like that instant advantage. Like maybe CS2 will do that, and we'll get a team that just cracks CS2 early, and then that's the era. But yeah, I mean CS:GO, the last few years of CS:GO, that has been the story of CS:GO. It's been the story of teams rising up and then just getting knocked off quite quickly. And G2 is just another one of those teams at the moment.
Yeah, and if anyone cracks that meta, it's gonna be heroic, and Cadian's gonna finish the story in Copenhagen.
Won't that
So,
be nice?
it'd fucking be beautiful. Anyway, so I've been Sam Animo Mackenzie. Get my own name out my mouth. You've been Parry Piro Pitchards, the greatest not really analyst in Counter Strike.
What does that even mean?
Well, you're not really an analyst, but you're sort of an analyst. You analyze
Mm,
things, and
you try.
that's I've tried for you, mate. All right, I fucking
We
tried for.
try.
I won't do it next time. I won't do it next time. You just right. This has been Harry Nero Richards, just a bit of a cunt. And
Oh,
this has been. Oh, sorry, mate. Was that too far?
I said we try, not you try.
Oh, okay. Well, sorry. Can I do the outro now?
Yes.
All right. Cheers. Cheers. Right. And this has been Deconstructed. I'm pretty sure it's episode 7. I might be chatting out my arse.
You are right.
We've been talking about G2, and let us know your thoughts below because I'm actually intrigued. Would you keep Uxie? Would you fuck him off? Is there any other change you'd make? If you would, you're probably a psychopath. And do you think Nico's the greatest rifler? Is he just a bottler? But yeah, other than that, like the video as well, subscribe to the channel. It would actually be quite nice. I typically say I don't care, but it would be pleasant. I kind of want to, make free P off this account at some point. But yeah, have a great day. Thanks for watching. See you later.
Oh well.